What if everything you thought you knew about climbing the career ladder was completely wrong? I'm Ryan Kohler, and today on The Future of Work with AI, we're having a conversation that's going to challenge everything you've been told about ambition, success, and what it really means to level up in your career. Our host, Emily Alvarez, is joined by Ariela Picciotto, a women's coach based in Paris who spent 15 years in tech before discovering something powerful. Sometimes the promotion you think you want isn't the life you actually need. She's worked across 4 countries, helped dozens of women break through the noise of what they're supposed to want, and she's got some seriously eye-opening insights about how AI is reshaping not just our work, but our relationship with work itself. Here's what's wild. We're living through this massive shift where technology is forcing us to ask the hard questions about fulfillment, identity, and what we actually want our lives to look like. And for women especially, this moment is creating opportunities to rewrite the script entirely. So if you've ever felt like you're climbing someone else's ladder, or you're curious about how AI is changing the game for women in leadership, or you just want to hear a conversation that gets real about ambition, identity, and what comes next, this one's for you. Let's dive in.
Well, thank you for joining us today on another episode of The Future of Work with AI. I'm your host, Emily Alvarez, and I am very excited and enthralled to have someone that shares a very similar background to me in our kind of upbringing into the tech industry and women in leadership positions coaching. I'm pleased to welcome Ariela Picciotto to the show today, joining us all the way from Paris, France. And Ariana, we're going to talk today about sort of an ambition reframe, right? And women in the workforce, global grit to real power. You and I met on LinkedIn. And we have came to find out pretty quickly we had a lot in common as far as our backgrounds is
Yeah.
concerned, which is always awesome. So Ariella, welcome to the show and tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and we'll get into the topic.
Yeah. Hi, Emily. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So yeah, a little bit about my background. I have a very international background. I am originally from Italy. I have lived about half of my life actually in places outside of my home country. I lived in, like I'm from Italy, so I lived in Rome for a long time and then proceeded to move on to Madrid and Paris and London and long time in New York. So I have a very multicultural and multi-country background. I am currently a women's coach. I work mostly with women in tech, women that, feel kind of like the weight of their big jobs, big responsibilities, big objectives, and are kind of like wondering what's next. Like, is this it? Like, there's comes a point and I think all of our careers were like, okay, like, am I supposed to just like continue with this for the next like 20 to 30 years?
Right.
Is that what I actually want? So those are kind of like the questions that I tackle with my clients. I came into this quite by accident, honestly, but it feels like most of my life has gone that way. I was working in tech. I had been working in tech for a long time, for about 15 years in different types of roles. And at some point I was in a role that I loved, but I started feeling like there must be something else. But at the same time, I was like, I don't want to actually quit my job. Like, this is a good job. I'm making good money. I actually love my team. Like, I've worked for long enough to know that, the grass is never like it's not necessarily going to be greener somewhere else. So I'm
Absolutely.
like, I'm just going to keep this job, but maybe I need something like, to like a new challenge, like something like a new interest to develop. And that's how I came into coaching. And when I started coaching, like my coaching course and then like coaching my first clients, I was like, oh, I think I want to do this now.
Yeah.
Like it started feeling like the impact that I was having was like something that I had been craving for a while without necessarily like recognizing that that was the case. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no, and I think that's a very interesting introduction to this because it's very similar to mine, right? We've talked about you started
Mhm.
out sort of in the fashion industry, right? And I same with me. I started as a young person in my career doing that and worked my way up, from like the bottom of whatever it was, like internship level basically, to like being a major developer. And so um I get what you mean though about feeling like there's something missing.
Yeah.
Because I know for me, when I was early in my career, I loved it because I was under almost more of like a mentorship. Like I had people that were teaching me, I was like real involved. And then I became that person at one point. But as a kind of inherent teacher or mentor myself, sort of like you, and I think people that get into coaching like that, it's a calling for us, right? Which is what
Yeah.
you're describing. It's a calling. We figure out that we have a certain level of knowledge and we don't want to just hold it in anymore. We want to give it away to people to help them rise, to blow that door open for them, because maybe somebody kicked that door open for us at one point in our career and we want to pay that forward. But I think where I was at was I was kind of like one of a couple, and there wasn't really an opportunity to mentor people where I was
Hmm.
at in my career. I was more just like doing things. I was more just sort of I was being creative and I was doing things that I enjoyed, but I wasn't like working with other people in the capacity of like, let me pass this on, because I just didn't have anybody around that I had been that person for so long. And then when I became the teacher, I didn't have a student to kind of pass that on
Hmm.
to at that point. And so I realized that that wasn't adding up for me. There was something missing. And I think that's that calling that you're talking about, is that identity of knowing that I'm going to get ultimate fulfillment when I'm giving back to someone else, and watching that light come on in their eyes, because we know how special that is to feel that way,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So like I actually had teams and like the managing part, which
Yeah.
people are like, managing is really difficult, and I would agree, but that was my favorite part of the job.
Right.
And like I'm still in contact with most of them, like
Yeah. Yeah.
so I actually went into coaching thinking like maybe I'll learn something that I can bring to them. And then it kind of like evolved from
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to, I mean, I definitely had people that I worked under me, but I think it was more like certain compartments within certain industries, you are sometimes more individualized than you are
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
hands-on. So production side of things, I had a whole team, right, that I worked with. And I still, like you, my friends were like the United Nations, because we came from like all over the world, right? Everybody, like in fashion, especially, like you get meet people from all over the world. In fact, our creative director was from France originally. So
Hmm.
I met people from all over the place, but I think um when you get to a point where you're kind of like there's something to be said about people that are creators, right? And I think in some capacities you and I are the type that we do better when we're collaborative around other people, and there's more creativity when we're able to open that. So let's paint sort of the dream, right? Because we're talking there, the ethos of this podcast for us is really about women in leadership, and women
Hmm.
that are looking to level up, that are looking to say like, this is what I want to do with my life, this is where I want to go. I don't necessarily know what that looks like yet, but I want to get there. So when you were young, I'm sure there was a script that you thought you had to follow, right? Yeah. So
Of
let's
course.
yeah, so let's break this down, because I think this is what happens, and we're talking specifically about women. So apologies to the men listening to this, but you'll hear things in this that will sound familiar, because there's all sorts of things like imposter syndrome and inadequacies, things that we as humans just naturally feel our ego gets in the way. But I think to kind of frame this off, we start with a script as women a lot of times about who we think in our head we're supposed to be. Who is your
Yeah.
script? Who is your script? Because I
I
have
think
one.
My script wasn't even like a particular role because I didn't have that. Actually, my first job was in consulting because, as most consultants, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And
Right,
that's what
right,
I was like, oh, maybe this is going to help me. But I had a vision. Like, I remember saying, like, like with my first paycheck, I'm actually going to buy myself an Armani suit because in my mind, like, that was
right,
the visual, right? Like,
right,
if you're
right. Power.
successful,
Yeah,
you're like, you're a powerful woman and you're gonna dress up like a man, essentially. Uh,
right.
because that's what power and success looks like. And I'm gonna go up the ladder. Like I was like, I'm not sure which ladder it's gonna be, but like, it's gonna be a ladder. And that's kind of like how I started. And then I got into Columbia Business School and I knew that I didn't want to do consulting anymore. So I was like, okay, like this is actually a reset point in my career, right? Like
Right,
what am I gonna do? And that's where I was like, oh, maybe I could do like fashion. I had grown up like working in stores, so I was like, maybe, like I can go up the ladder there. And
yeah,
then I got the role and I was like, I experienced it, and there were parts of it that were actually cool. Like I was actually working at Armani. I got my suit, like I got the things, and I was like, this is actually not fulfilling at all. So what
right,
is gonna be like more fulfilling for me? Like maybe I need like coming from consulting, I also felt like I wasn't having that much of an impact as a consultant. I was like, we're producing PowerPoints essentially and Excel sheets. So I was like, okay, maybe I want something where I can have a bigger impact.
right.
Maybe I can do that in fashion, but then like it's such a structured like word where like high fashion, it's like, it's actually very hard to get to the level where you'd
Yes,
be able to make an impact. I was like, I'm not willing to wait for that, like a whole bunch of like time and effort and like who knows if it's ever gonna happen. So I was
right,
like, no, like I think probably like entrepreneurship is the way to go. Like I can definitely like, make an impact there. And that's kind of like how I slowly fell into tech um and that like in my mind, like at some point, like as I was in the tech industry, I was like, okay, like I'm back in the ladder. Like, I'm wearing jeans and sneakers, like
right,
not wearing the suit anymore, but like, I'm back on the ladder. And then I was like, I actually don't think that the ladder works necessarily. Like that's what I was seeing around me. I was like, I don't I don't think, like, I think one thing that I grew up with, which is something that is very typical for women to grow up with, is the myth of, like if you do good work, you keep your head down, but you do good work, somebody's gonna see it and somebody's gonna recognize it. Um, and I think it was like a harsh wake up call when I realized that that absolutely wasn't true.
right.
And I think that that time like comes in the life of most women at some point where you're like, why did she or he get a promotion? Like I was doing so well, like my manager's so happy with me. I'm getting all these results, like, like I'm achieving, overachieving things, like things are happening. And yet that promotion that I wanted, I didn't get.
Right.
What happened?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how that perception of what we think we want changes. And then or what we think we
Yeah.
need or what we think we need changes, right?
Hmm.
It's funny you brought up the women. I'll just kind of recap back, but bringing up the women like what you wanted in Armani suit. I remember back when YSL was designing the women's tuxedo, like, the real fitted, tailored,
Beautiful.
beautiful. One of my favorite designs ever, right? Like YSL, love. But it was very masculine. Like it was that idea of like women need to start wearing power suits. They need to start being like, coming to the office in dark colors and looking like the men and fitting into, especially if you were in specific industries like that required you to dress like that. Um, Luckily for me, I was in premium denim, so I was always in jeans and t-shirts because that was kind of like my uniform. But I mean, we to wake up and feel that lack of something is a very common thing. And I think for women, all women, it's different. it's different as to what that is that's calling. But I know for me in my career, what it was more just a lack of feeling like I was I think I felt kind of like I had hit the highest point at where I could
Hmm.
be. And there was like really nothing. I mean, I probably could have gone higher, but I don't know that I wanted to. And then you factor in like the amount of pressure that was put on women, especially, and we're talking obviously pre-COVID. We're talking like back in, this was like for me, it was like 2013, 2014, like 2012 to,
Hmm.
like early 2000 teens. And it was like this was back in the day when everybody carried two cell phones. Everybody traveled ridiculously. We worked stupid hours. Driving in and out of LA was like a 2 hour commute in and out of LA every day, but that's what you did. You just dealt with it. And I think what happens is you get to a point where, like, I know for me, it was I was driving like down the 405 freeway in LA one day or in Southern California, and I was thinking to myself, like, why am I sitting like, I'm wondering how much time I'm wasting sitting in traffic every week, hours and
Oh my
hours and
God, we used to do
hours.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe this is not where like I should be spending my time. I know I love what I'm doing, but like then you had the whole back then like the whole stuff with the tariffs and the embargoes on fabric was happening with Europe, and they were raising all the taxes, and so I was like I don't like this is a lot of pressure for a young person with two small children to be dealing with while we're like, while all of this to say what that I became a professional woman. So I think what it was for me was like there wasn't a balance. And that's
But
something
that
that's important.
happened. Yeah, but I think that that happens like whether you have a family, you don't have it. Like I think there's an evolution of your
Yeah.
ambition. Like obviously you
Yep.
get to certain roles because you're ambitious, because you're prepared, because you do a good job, like because you're high performing. So, but your ambition, like as you evolve, like your ambition evolves with you. And
Yep.
at some point it might lead you in places where you're like, wait, but like I worked so hard to get here, and all of a sudden, it feels like I don't care about this anymore. So
Yeah.
what happened? So
Yeah.
there's like a lot of like identity that plays into it because
Yep.
obviously we put so much obviously time and effort in our career, but also like we identify with it so much that like, when people are like, like, hi, how are you? And you introduce
Right.
yourself, like that's the first thing that you say about yourself generally. It's like what do you do?
Right.
I know shifting from like, oh, I work in tech or like, like I manage people to I'm a coach. Like for me, like it was like a huge identity shift. The first time that I said it out loud, I was like, whoa, what
Yeah.
about what about like I felt like I needed to say like I'm a coach, but also I did all of these things before.
Right.
Right? Like I couldn't let go and just like realize like, okay, like I evolved and we'll do, and that's great. And I'm taking all of the things that I have learned in my years of experience and different types of experiences and bringing them with me in my coaching.
Right. Yeah, and I think we're having a coach like you or someone having that resource come in where this is important is when you do get to that point where you have that identity crisis, right? Because it does happen. It really does happen where you one day you wake up and you're like, and this doesn't happen to everybody, but you wake up some of us wake up and say, I don't know that I want to do this anymore. Or like, is this really it? Is this really what I'm like meant to be
Exactly.
doing? And that is a major for a lot of us can be a crisis of identity because you're right. We do emphasize our position in life. I mean, if you think about our jobs, it for a lot of us it helps identify our socioeconomic status. It helps us identify how much schooling we've had. It helps us identify um how disciplined usually someone is depending on their, yeah, and it speaks to sometimes their personality type, right? Like some people do not have the personality type to be a emergency room physician, right? Others do, and that's why we have them. But it's when you get to a point where you hit a wall and you're like, what it like, I don't know that this is it, and I don't know that I want this to be it, and I don't know that I'm comfortable with this being it. That's when it's kind of like, oh crap, what now? Right? And
Exactly.
so it becomes a really weird tightrope that we walk because it's like if I fall off of this thing, like I'm not really sure if there's a net down there. I don't know what's going to happen to me. And
Hmm.
that's scary, especially for women, because we tend to, I think, as matriarchs, we tend to kind of be the one, at least in my family, this was the way, but it was like the women were kind of the ones that held everything together as far as like the family unit, right? And so when you had a professional working mother like I did, and then like that person is supposed to be the person that holds the family together, it creates an image in your head of kind of like this is maybe what I'm supposed to, because you emulate what you see.
Yeah.
And then it becomes your entire, in a lot of ways, your identity, because there is so much pride and everything and time and energy wrapped up into what we do. And for the majority of us, we do really want to do a good job at what we do. So there's that sense of fulfillment that comes from it,
Hmm.
right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think this exists. So let's talk about, because globally, you're in Paris, I'm in southern Utah. I've traveled all over Europe. I have not lived there, but what would you say? Because I think there's parallels no matter where you live, no matter who you are. As women in general, we notice that there are different cultural rewards, I would say, and also different things that shape women's leadership, right? What would you say have been some of the main things that you've seen um, about how like cultures and other companies reward, shape women in leadership? Because to kind of segue into this, I think part of where we talk about maybe lack of fulfillment sometimes for women is the internal stigma, but also can be culturally what's going on at that company and
Hmm.
how the women are viewed in that company. And people will say, well, it's 2026 and these like gender role issues don't really, they're not the same as they used to be. Let me tell you something, they are. They're just not talked about in the same framing as they were 20, 30, 40 years ago. But the issues
Hmm.
still exist. They're just a little different, or they may have evolved into new issues. And women still, because we are sensitive, typically we do take that on. And so what have you noticed as far as that is that happening in other cultures? Is that sort of a universal truth in a lot of ways?
I think in a lot of ways, yes. And it might be surprising that, like, I think because the US obviously is like such a big market,
Right,
like a lot of the things that happen in the US are actually like reproduced in other countries because like maybe you have a subsidiary or like something like that.
right.
But I remember like there was especially one company that I worked for, obviously not gonna name names, but
Sure.
where all of the leadership team was men.
Right.
Like the only person that was a woman in the leadership team. Can you guess what function she was representing?
HR.
Of course.
Yeah, of
And so
course.
like, like that is very typical for like traditional companies. But this was like a kind of like a startup slash scale up. Like it wasn't, um, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, because like the image blocked. Okay. I was saying like this was like a startup slash scale up. So you would have expected them to have like a more modern view of how work like companies like should work.
Right.
But that wasn't the case. So that's kind of like heartbreaking. So I think even now, like seeing like all the DEI programs and things like that getting removed, um, it's kind of like, it's probably confirmation of something that we all knew, which is like the boys club like never wanted anything to change.
Right. Yeah, I definitely believe it's the boys' club. I think it's women are not as quiet as we used to be
Hmm.
about being uncomfortable, right? It used to
Yeah.
kind of be expected that, like, or not expected, but it was like if you're uncomfortable at something or about something at work, like don't say anything. Just deal with it because the consequences of saying something are far more diabolical than if you don't say something. And so I think it stands to reason that as women become more empowered and get more vocal, it's the pendulum swing of the extremes, right? So women get more
Hmm.
vocal. And then instead of being like, wow, maybe there's a problem here, and maybe we should try to understand why people are getting more vocal, why people are not like rolling over and just taking it, showing their belly all the time. Um, Maybe there's a systemic issue here that's causing that. No, the issue is to swing the pendulum as far to the opposite extreme as possible and impose more avenues of control or more
Yeah.
avenues of let's knock this person down a peg or two. And unfortunately, traditionally, women have been that sort of the gender that has sort of gotten that
Mhm.
throughout the years. And so,
But I think that there are a lot of companies also like to kind of
yeah.
like like acknowledge like that there are companies
Oh,
that
absolutely.
actually do care about these issues, and not only do care, it's just like naturally they have a more balanced approach where like,
Right.
they can have a woman in the board and that woman can be the CFO or like,
Right.
or the CEO or whatever. So I think it is more and more common, but I think that there like continues to be like no matter where you are in the world, like some pushback from certain types of companies and leaders.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think with tech, maybe it's just the opportunity that I'm in right now, but I think this is kind of from what I'm seeing, because I watch a lot of stuff and I listen to a lot of like individuals that talk women in tech, right? Like Kira Swisher, everybody knows her. Everybody
Yeah.
knows who some of these women are that have been big in the tech industry. Um, I think the tech industry has actually been, at least as far as what I've seen, far more accepting of women being in tech as far as an overall industry than others I have seen. I think women, maybe, and I don't know about internationally, but here in the United States, I am seeing a huge uptick in women that are wanting to learn about technology and AI. I would
Yeah.
say it is primarily women. It is primarily women that we get applications for. It is primarily women that come up to me and say, "How can I get involved? How can I learn AI? How did you do this? How did you get into it?" Um, because there's an approachability to it. I think that's a little different
Hmm.
than other industries. Um, and so I think one of the most misunderstood things about women in tech or some of these other industries is that um we just haven't been given the chance to have these technical um skills developed maybe as rapidly as men have. There haven't been as many opportunities, but they are coming, and there are a lot more
Yeah.
technical opportunities now for women than I've ever seen before, especially with the introduction of AI. And I think it's because AI is allowing us to rethink the way that we work in general. And so, talk a little bit about what has your experience been, Ariela, with women internationally in tech? How have you seen the landscape kind of change? Because I've been in it for about 10 years now, so I've seen it change pretty drastically for women in 10 years.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think like it's also like internationally, as I said, like, like we see similar things. And also like, big caveat is also like I've worked for American companies in
Sure,
Europe as
sure.
well. So like, like they bring the same, like, very
Right.
similar approaches to other countries that they have in the US. So but no, I agree. Like I think that tech is like again, like it's company dependent and things like that. But I think it is an industry that it's interesting for women. It is an industry that it's quite welcoming. I think it depends, like it would still like depend on the roles. Like there are some roles that are more welcoming for women than others, like, you know. But even then, like I think that there are a lot of like directors of products that are women.
Right.
Whereas like before, like, you know, in the technical roles, like you would see mostly men and it would be like a little bit of like a more of a boys club again.
Right.
So I think that women are more interested in technical roles, and I think that the industry is happy to have them again. But like I think it's company dependent and it's up to like each person to actually like figure out where they're like, you know, aiming to go and whether or not it's the right fit for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's most things I think because I'm the type that will seek out culture in a company. Like I don't, I'm more about the culture, and if I fit culturally than like anything else. And I think with tech, what one of the things I'm seeing with women, um, is that because AI is this is gonna because men are like communication depends on your style and how you've developed it over
Mhm.
time. Um, I would argue that in my career, this is just my personal experience, and I'm not trying to be sexist, but women in my career have been better communicators than men. Hell, in my life, women have been better communicators than men, typically. One of the things I see with AI a lot is that generative AI, especially, or AI prompting any of this, and you know this, context is important when we're prompting.
Mhm.
It is important to give the AI as much information about like what role it's playing, what job it's doing, you know, what backstory and knowledge you want to give it, all of the things, right? We have to give it context if we want it to give good output.
Of course.
Women tend to do very well with AI because we're great at like compartmentalizing, but also being able to say like to be able to thought process things out, to structure things in a way that's like, okay, from A to Z, let's put it in order and do it in a way that, you know, makes sense from a logical perspective. Because I've watched women, this is a funny thing, I've watched men do this too, but women, like when they have a baby in their hands or something, or like they're multitasking and something will fall off a table and they'll reach out and catch it. Meanwhile, they're still holding whatever it is they're holding. They're still juggling whatever it is they're doing. Like we're just naturally like very agile in the way that we move through life because we've had to be. And we
Mhm.
typically are the ones that like hold the kids together and we make sure they're not running out into the street or, you know, like jumping on the dog where the dog's going to turn around and bite them or do something like that. We're constantly on to look for what's going on. That is the best asset somebody can have when they are prompting an AI is to be able to communicate and contextualize things well. And if you're able to do that, you're going to be a great prompter. You're going to be really good at getting some great output from it because you're telling it literally directing it where you want it to go.
Mhm.
Um, I think men can do that too, but I think women are the masters at this. And I also think that with technology, especially with COVID and everybody kind of finding out that we don't have to be in an office 24/7 to actually get our work done, like we can work remotely some days or, you know, do some things differently, hybrid schedules. There's a lot of different things. I think that's opened the door for so many women in tech to be able to say, you know what? I can still have a family. I can still be at home. I can still, like, you know, on my lunch break, I can run around. I can take clothes out of the dryer. I can, you know, do whatever I need to do. I do that all the day long while I'm home. You know, I'm like moving stuff around. I'll wash a dish. I'll come back. I'll do something. But it's like we just, it's a very open environment for women because we're able to have balance again with these types of roles.
Yeah, except that a lot of these roles are disappearing. So,
True.
except that there's a lot of companies that are mandating return to office.
True.
And obviously, like the women, again, because they're generally the ones like holding together the family, the
Right.
household, the kids, the like, the job, because they like women have always worked. It's not that women started working during COVID because they could be
Oh,
at
of
home.
course not.
Like
Yeah, of
women were working
course not.
before.
Yeah.
And COVID, in a way, like not COVID, because like during the months where we were in lockdown, like that was terrible for, especially for mothers that needed to hold the kids and the things. But after COVID, like for those years where actually companies were pretty accommodating with remote work, and because we figure out like we can actually work from everywhere and the
Right.
work still gets done, that was a great help for women in general. Because as you said, like, like I can, like be on a call and then, in the same time, like, put the lunch like on the stove and get the
Right.
clothes out of the dryer, like, do the things that you'd have to do anyway. Whereas like now with these like mandated return to office, um, like that's again like putting a lot of women in the conditions where they have to actually like maybe quit their job because maybe they moved in the meantime, or maybe
Right.
they realize that they have rearranged their lives in a way that doesn't allow anymore for like full-time 5 days, like 5 days of the week at the office.
Right.
And again, like that's where like, you can still like really see the difference between men and women. It's like the women are the ones like asking themselves these questions. Men don't actually worry about it. Like, you have to go back to the office and they go back to the office. Like, you've done
Right.
this before, you'll do it again.
Yeah.
But then like everything else that is on the women's plate generally, then like it poses questions for women when it comes to like the type of environment where they want to work.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I would, for those employers that let their employees work from home during COVID, had productive employees that were on lockdown, but that are now forcing people to come back to the office. I would implore those employers to really take an internal look at yourself, because and what is your motivation for that? What is the reason behind it? Because if it's just that you feel like that's a way for you to have like a micromanaged control over your employees where you have to be able to have eyes on them at all times, that's a you problem. That's not a them
Mhm.
problem. Because we have now found that people actually were happier working from home. They're happier. They're more life balanced, fulfilled when they have the option, especially if you're going to go back to a workplace where like they haven't put a new coat of paint on the walls for 10 years. It's the same posters on the walls for the past, 5 years. It's not like it's all cubic. It's a sea of existential crushing cubicles, the rows of them. I mean, no one wants to come back to work in that environment if they don't have to, when they can do the same amount of work, if not probably more, when they're at home. So, in your experience, Ariela, how do you help women kind of untangle what they want from what they've been conditioned to pursue in this case? Because that breaks my heart when I hear women say, I have to choose between my job or my career and my family, because it shouldn't, if that's not what you want, it shouldn't have to be that way. But
It
you also
shouldn't have to be
but
that
you
way.
also shouldn't have to spend your entire paycheck on childcare expenses if you're able to do that from home, because the whole point of having maybe a second job or two income family is to have two incomes in the family, not to use one income to pay
Hmm.
specifically for childcare. So, how do you kind of untangle that internal dialogue?
So I think that that's where like coaching becomes like vital. I mean, like it can be coaching, it can be something else. Like it could be therapy. It could be like, like having really close friends where you like who you actually feel like you can talk to and, bounce ideas off of. But like I think that there's a lot that comes into it. I think that there's obviously like first of all, like as you say, like untangle what is it, and untangle and understand like what is it that you really want. Because again, like maybe you wanted a career for most of your life and now you don't anymore. That could be it.
Right.
Maybe you want a different type of career. Maybe you actually want to go back to the career that you used to have. And you're completely fine with like, having child support and like care and, like having family help or like whatever that may be, or maybe there's like a husband that actually like, is
Right.
not that fulfilled at work where like, like maybe you're more a higher achiever and like I think if there's a partnership, like, you could use that partnership and so I think that there isn't like a one for all answer. And
Right.
the hard thing about this is like there's a lot of conditioning, there's a lot of like shame, there's a lot of like what are people gonna think? What are people gonna say?
Right.
No matter what the response is for you, right? Like maybe the response is, I actually really want to continue to invest in my career. What are people
Right.
gonna say? Like, I'm a terrible mother. My kids are gonna hate me. I absolutely don't believe that that is true. I think like a parent who's fulfilled in whatever it is that they do actually like, gives a great example to their kids that,
Right.
like that is important. So like you should, you should take care of yourself and your passions and the things that you're interested in and all the things. So I think I don't think that there's a one for like one fit all like answer. And that's where like coaching is super helpful because it really helps untangle all of this in a very safe space where if I was able to create a good coaching relationship, obviously like you could feel like you could share this with me and say
Yeah.
like, you know what, I actually want to go back to work. I love my kids, but I cannot stay at home with them. Like
Right.
I'd rather, like take a good chunk of my paycheck, pay somebody else, and then
Right.
I'll spend my weekends with them, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Or somebody who's like on the flip side, like their whole identity has been like, I'm a super high achieving professional, but now I got this kid and actually I don't care about my career. Like it's not that I don't care about my career anymore, but like I don't care in the same way and I want to
Right.
take a step back. But again, that's my identity. My identity
Right.
has been that I was like a very high achieving person. So like what are people gonna think? Like, she lost her mind, like she invested all this time, all this money in education, and she had such a powerful career ahead of her, and what is she doing?
Right.
So I think that like, you know, working with all of that is super important and it takes time to be able to actually get to the root because you're gonna get like, if I have a client, then it's a new client and we start talking about this, like the first answer that you get, it's not the real one. It's gonna take time to actually get to that real answer because the
Right.
real answer most of the time you don't want to admit either.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you made a really good point about like to sum it up, cutting through the noise, right? Because it's a lot. It's a lot of noise. There's a lot when you're trying to like redefine what is going on, or especially redefine, or just define in general. But if you're trying to like reinvent or redefine, or to your point, if circumstances change and priorities shift, right, then that changes the trajectory of what priorities become number one, number two, number three. Like the promotion plan changes, right?
Hmm.
So to speak. And so I'm going to get into that because you told me a great story when we were on a call on our first intro call about a client who had came to you asking for like a promotion plan of some kind, where she had wanted to get promoted and wanted to, move on in higher ways in her life and her career. And she left with something very different than what she expected after you had kind of helped her cut through that noise. So tell us a little bit about like what happened in that case, because that's pretty common where we think one
Yeah.
thing, but that's why it's important to remember that our internal dialogue and our internal story and what we tell ourselves doesn't always necessarily have to be the concrete foundation. It can change because of what happened with your client. So talk a little bit about what happened in that scenario.
Yeah, so in that scenario, as you said, like there was a client who came in and she wanted, yeah, like she was looking to get a promotion and that's what she wanted to work on. And then as we started working together, it became clear that there were reasons why she was like she wanted the promotion. Like she'd been there for a while. She felt like, like everyone else was getting promotions, so like she should get it as
Right.
well. And obviously
Right.
it's more money, it's more recognition, all of these like beautiful things. But as we started working together, like I could see that there wasn't like sometimes we're like you really get a feel for people, and the deeper you go in that coaching relationship, like the deeper that feeling. And so like I could see that her eyes like wouldn't really sparkle like when we would talk about, what her life was going to look like when she got that promotion. Like you could see that it was like not something that she was like honestly excited about. It kind of
Right.
like felt like, she needed to, like check,
Yeah,
like,
like the next indicated
yeah,
step. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And so I started questioning like her about it. I was like, like I'm observing this, like, what do you think is happening? Like, are there other things? And slowly, like, yeah, like she realized that actually she wanted to build her own thing. And like she had this dream for a long time, but she never even admitted, like most people in her life didn't even know that this was a dream of hers. And the more we talked about it, the more she was like, I think that this is really like what I want to do. And she was able to actually like, yeah, launch her own business by the end of like
Awesome.
our work together. So I think that these are transformations that are quite common in coaching, not necessarily because people need to change their minds. It's just that you quiet the noise around yourself for long enough to be able to hear yourself, and the other person is hearing you as well, so they can mirror certain things to you that
Right.
you wouldn't be able to mirror like alone. And because like we all have a very active internal dialogue, but most of the times we're trying to convince ourselves of a lot of things
Right.
a lot
Yeah.
of times, like, like you have a pit in your stomach where you're like, I actually like, I don't really want this promotion. Like you feel it somehow in your body, like, like when you think about it, like you don't feel excited, you feel like nervous and anxious, but you don't question it. You're like, but this is the right thing to do. Like this is
Right.
what I've been told. Like this is the next step that I am supposed to want. So this is what I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of being curious about why is it that every time that I think about this, like I actually get a pit in my stomach.
Right. Right. And I think that's the unfulfillment. It's also the sense of not being anchored,
Of
just not
course.
feeling, not feeling tethered, right? And that can be that always forces those deeper conversations. Um, and I think that AI specifically is a different technology than anything we've ever experienced. But my opinion is that it's exposing human, emotional, cultural work that individuals still need to do on themselves, society needs to do on itself, companies need to do on themselves, um, to kind of like these are things that need to evolve that maybe haven't. And I think as the technology evolves, what's interesting is that it's forcing these conversations. It's forcing us to rethink and have an emotional reset and not think about our lives being on autopilot as much, but instead letting the tech be the autopilot, which is really what it was meant to do in the first place. Like the
Mhm.
tech really is like meant to be agentic. It's meant to be autopilot. It's meant to take things off of humans' plates to make things more fulfilled for us, in my opinion. And so, have you noticed that in your conversations with women about how like AI and technology is kind of changing that landscape around um this is exposing some things that maybe I didn't realize that I like with companies or the way things are happening or the way work is getting done in general. I think I've seen it with my clients. I'm just wondering if that's been a thing that you've experienced.
I've seen with my clients the fact that like sometimes it would point out things where they're like, oh, I was really surprised about that. I had
Yeah.
never thought about it. So I think that that's like the best case scenario of how people can use it in a way that it's like, oh, actually, this is interesting. Like, I don't know why I never talked about it or like thought about it.
Yeah.
So I think that it can be very, very helpful. I just like I think, like, as you say, like, it was built to take things off of humans' plates. It wasn't built to replace humans and
Correct.
human connection. And that's where I think, like, the risk is right now. And what everyone says, like, we need to focus on our humanity because this is like the humanity, like, what makes us human is what's gonna differentiate us from AI,
Absolutely.
except that we're not that great of human like humans right now, like
Right.
they're like we look around at
We got
the
some
news
issues.
and the thing, like, yeah, we got some issues, like we don't know how to talk to each other anymore. COVID definitely didn't help, like we're
Right.
super isolated. um and in a way, I think also AI is not helping us having those like conversation, like honest conversations, because we're getting used to being mirrored something that we're gonna like.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like that's also like a big risk. Like the more we use it for certain things, like a lot of people use it for therapy now. I'm like, that's not what it's supposed to do. Like
No.
like great, you have a doubt, like you can put it in and like, bounce ideas off of it. But like
Right.
therapy requires another person
Right.
to be able to actually like see certain things about you and be able to name them in a way that it's safe. First of all, like we've seen that, like the impact of like of AI and like suicidal, like teens and things like that. So like I think that there are like risks connected to it if we delegate our humanity to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, there's a balance, just like with anything. And
Exactly,
yeah, and I
exactly.
think it can't, AI can replace our tasks, it can replace certain functionalities that we do, right? But it can't replace empathy. It can't replace emotional intelligence. It can't replace identity. It can't replace human values. It can't replace ethics. Because humans are the ones that designed the programming, the AI. And so it, to your point, it's going to mirror back anything you say to it. And so the way these AI language models are programmed now is to be, unless it's Grok, that can get kind of snarky. But most of them are highly complimentary of you, right? It's like, oh,
Yeah,
that's a great idea. And it's like, I could have just said that I was going to do something really not like horrendous, and it might tell me like, well, that's an interesting idea, and like, well, but it's not going to necessarily try to talk me out of it, right? And so it doesn't have that emotional intelligence as an edge that we need in order to balance it all out. And so the goal of AI really is a framework where there is human and tech balance culturally, where the adopter of it, or the company that's implementing it, or whatever the case may be, tools, platforms, whatever that looks like, the humans have to be the story, not the tech.
exactly.
That's the difference, is the humans are the story. The humans dictate what the tech does because they're the ones, ultimately, we're the ones that know how that's going to have an impact on us, positive or negative. And the good thing about AI is it adjusts pretty quickly. So if something's not working, you can pivot pretty quickly as long as you know how to communicate to it to how to do that. But it does not replace humans, and it should not replace humans. And the more that we do these weird things that we're doing, like getting into relationships with the robot, um, using it for therapy, like as an actual, in place of an actual human therapist, these are dangerous things. We,
Mm.
you can use AI, like, for example, I know people that go to therapy outside, like with a human, and then take their therapy notes and load it into their AI and ask, like, and then do some like follow-up type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally appropriate, right? Like that's a
Yeah.
great utilization of it, actually, because you're using it to um dig into your self-improvement and your self-awareness. But when you're using it to replace your self-awareness and replace your critical thinking, we have a problem. And it's not
Replace your
gonna,
ability to connect with people. Like
yes,
replace, like, right? Like I'm not gonna ask a therapist or I'm not gonna talk to my friend because again, like I'm afraid of being shamed for whatever it is I want to ask AI. And so like I replace the human connection that I would have created even with a friend
right.
where I'm like, like I have this issue or I have this question or I'm thinking about this. What do you think? But because like now we have this like readily available, we're like, oh, like I'll just ask AI and then like that opportunity for connection is lost.
Yep. Well, also the ability to critical think is lost. Critical
Exactly.
think. And that is the most egregious. I mean, the human connection is terrible. The critical thinking is almost worse because you need critical thinking to interact with other people, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to think for yourself and how to deduce and reason, and you don't have intellectual capacity to be consistent in your intellectual values and your views and your identity, it becomes very difficult for other people then to interact with you because you've lost anything human
Yeah.
about what makes this a human experience. And that's where the danger is. But AI needs to be the focus of the cultural conversation, but not the focus of the shift itself. And the
Hmm.
shift itself has to be human. The AI
Yeah.
is only there as a helper, so to speak, or a tool,
Great.
right? An autopilot that you can
As it's supposed to
program.
be.
Right. But it's not supposed to be the do all end all be all take over everything and just automate your whole life. Like
Hmm.
you're not going to be fulfilled doing that either. We're talking about women being fulfilled. Trust me, you're not going to be fulfilled doing that either.
Not for
It's
sure.
yeah. So I mean from individual agency to systemic change, if we took everything we've learned from leading globally, mentoring women, navigating this AI shift, what would the future workplace you design look like in this equation? This is one of my favorite questions to ask people.
I think it would definitely be like a flexible workplace
Yeah,
to accommodate for people's needs. Like, I don't even want to say women because I think, like, we're all humans and maybe you want to go for a run, like, at a certain point during the day, whatever that may be. Like, I think we need to go back to, very easily, like, you have a job, these are your objectives.
right,
Do it whenever you want. Like, I know, for example, like, I am not a morning person. Like, I do my best work later in the afternoon. That's how
right,
I've always been.
right.
And it shouldn't matter. Like, right? Like,
Yeah,
I think like people should be able to get organized and do their things knowing that they have agency. Like,
right,
obviously, like, we work in a society and like, if there are meetings like at the time where you want to go run, like you should take the meeting. But like
right,
in general, like I think that there should be like definitely like flexibility. I think that there should be like, like a component of like all of these systems that are great that can help us, like integrated in a way that makes sense. I think that there should be open communication when it comes to these tools as well, because
yep,
a lot of people are scared. Is AI gonna take my job? Like, I think it's a question that a lot of people have, even people like developers that, like felt pretty safe in their jobs
yeah,
before, right? Like it was like very high paying jobs, and now like even they're like, like if AI can code just the same way that I do,
right,
what's gonna happen to my role? So I think that there's a lot of like conversations that need to happen about all of this. Open conversations where like, like companies actually put some sort of like guardrails around it. And again, like fuel within their company, um, like a human development of
right,
all of the skills that make us human and all of the abilities that make us human so that we don't lose them in this like crazy race that we all seem to be part of.
right. Yeah, and that's really what it is it's kind of this rat race to get to be number one, to get to the top, to be the most profitable, the most powerful, the most
Hmm.
productive, the most efficient, right? But that doesn't make us the most effective. Let's be real.
Exactly.
So it none of that matters if it's not effective. So to me, a lot of it, to your point, is do your research and development, do your learning and development, trust your team. Like when they're talking about these things and they're vocalizing what's going on, or hey, this is working, this is not working. Like we have to allow them to be the builders, really, because our teams are the ones that are in the trenches. Our teams are the ones that see things. I know this about me. I have a team. I don't see every single nuance of everything that happens. There's no way I could, and nor do I want to, because I would be
Exactly.
working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like I'm not a micromanager. But like the one thing I do know is that power isn't about just one seat. It's about a collective. And it's about making sure that people feel safe enough to say, this doesn't make sense to me. I don't know about this. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't look right. I don't understand this. Can you help me? And
And that psychological safety is very hard for companies to
yes,
foster because, like, people know that a lot of times they're just like very disposable for the companies. And
yeah,
so, like, yeah. So I
yeah.
think
And
that like being able to create that within like, individual teams and then like at a company level, that like would be huge for people.
yeah. Well, and I think that's where we talk about leveling up, right? Is yes, there are some fears. I'm not going to pull any punches. I'm not going to bullshit anybody. There are fears about jobs disappearing to technology. There that is happening. And for companies that haven't looked into AI yet or some form of it for your business, the time is now because the ship is left the dock. Like you can see it. It's out there at the by now it's probably out in the distance quite a ways. You got to catch up to it to get on a dinghy and get out there because it's we once companies fall behind this, to your point, they're not going to be able to compete. Even
Sure.
if they keep the same amount of people, you're going to be competing against other companies that are doing the same amount, if not more output with less people, that are just automating more tasks. And maybe they didn't have to let anybody go to do it. They just adopted things that allow them to automate more things. And as a result, they haven't had to hire more people or they haven't, whatever. But the reality of the situation is when we look at this, this is a way to figure out how we can level up skills, how we can utilize this as a tool, again, that has positive impact on things.
Mhm.
Um, but again, it's knowing where to push and pull and where to say, no, this is not something that the tech should be touching. This is something that a human should be looking at. Or at the very least, if you're going to have the tech touch it, a human needs to then do an oversight of it, right? An audit. And so I think that's one thing I wish people would let go of in this year is like just try some new stuff. And if you don't like it, you don't have to use it. But at the very least, like you need to be aware of what your competition is doing.
Yeah.
And the internal belief, I don't know, I'm going to ask you the same question. I have one internal belief I hope women let go of in 2026, and that is that they have to just that they can't change careers now, that it's too late. Because the wonderful thing about the technology now is that it allows you to do that. It allows you to do the possibilities are endless if you get into this. Like you can open up a lot of different revenue streams for yourself if you learn how to use this in ways that will enhance. But that's one thing I want people to try more things and get out of their comfort zone a little bit more and get rid of this belief that if I do this or play around with this, it's going to melt something down. It's not going to do that. But get a coach, go to some roundtables, go to some masterminds, figure out a way to get involved in community because otherwise, like, you're going to stay stagnant and things are moving too fast right now for that. So,
Mhm.
what about you? What's one belief you hope women will kind of let go of in 2026 now that we're kind of into the first of this year, which has been felt like we've already been in a year in the first
Oh my
month and a
God.
half of this year. So,
I think for me, like it's very similar to yours, but it's even more in general. Like I feel like sometimes like women get to a point where like they feel like everything that they're doing is kind of like by inertia, like,
Right.
like somehow like there's no more agency, there's no more like, oh, I can do this, like I've never done it before, but guess
Right.
what, I can figure it out. As you say, like, there are great technologies available to us to actually figure it out, and just stop getting like stopped by their fear of like, I've always done this, so I'll
Right.
continue to do this, even though I'm not excited about it anymore. Like, this is not fulfilling. I feel like I need to do something else. Like, it's just like I have this like very deep belief that at the end of the day, we can figure anything out.
Oh, for
Like,
sure.
obviously, like, if you're like 70 years old and you decide that you want to become like a heart surgeon, I mean, like,
You might have a little
like,
difficulty.
yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
maybe the time has passed, but like within reason, I think
Yeah.
we as humans, we can figure anything out. And I think the difference when it comes to this, like the difference between men and women is that men will just jump. I mean, you see it like, like men apply to jobs that they have no qualifications for.
Yep.
And they're like, I'm just like gonna put my hand in the ring. Like, who knows what's gonna happen. They're like, yeah, I mean, I think I can figure it out. Like, I think I can do it. It's smart, whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas like women are like, oh my God, out of these like 10 things, I have nine of them, so I cannot apply.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a lot of this is a whole different topic, but I think that's a lot of women, other women experiencing, and this has happened to me in my career too, but I've let it go because this is humans in general. Humans are complicated. But there have been situations where as a woman, I've not always had other women in industries like leave the door open for other women or kick the door open for other women or even willing to leave it open a crack, right? Because they're afraid that there's only one spot at the top. And if they're not in it, some other woman will be in it and it won't be them and they'll be ousted and that'll be that. Because that's the competition of this unhealthy thing that women do in their heads of like I got here and now I have to like cling to life to this position because this is as high as I'm going to get and I'll be damned if anybody is going to claw it away from my clutches, right? um that's not the great that's a mentality I wish women would just get rid of because especially with tech today there's so many opportunities, like so many, and they just keep opening more and more up. And even if you don't want to be in tech, like there's a lot more opportunity today out there, but get like like get involved with a coach like yourself or someone that can help cut through that noise. Someone that really knows it's a calling for them to help people cut through noise in their life because that balance is really that life balance is what it comes back to every single time for me. Is like
Yeah.
just get your life in balance if you can to the best of your ability. It's never going to be
Hmm.
perfect, but
Get out of your own way. Like,
yeah,
sometimes like
yeah,
we're our own worst enemies. Like, even like I see when people are like thinking about coaching and then they're like, oh no, but maybe, like I'll read another book, and you're like, the book is not going to change anything for you. Like, it's
got to
interesting
put it
and
into
whatnot,
action.
but like, yeah, you need to start moving, like,
Right,
because the confidence is going to come with you moving, the support, like everything, and you're going to realize again, you can do things, like
right,
you can figure it out
right.
no matter what. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's like stop getting in our own ways.
Absolutely. Very well said. Well, Ariela, this has been an awesome conversation. I'm so glad and grateful to have you on the show. Thank you for doing this.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, so our audience knows you can follow Ariela on LinkedIn. She's on my LinkedIn. We'll also include all the links on the episode for this for her website as well, which is arielapicciotto.com. And then your company is just called Ariela. But they can find you online on my LinkedIn. We'll also, like I said, share all of the links. Every one of these podcasts is a resource. Everybody that is on the show is a resource. So if you have questions, reach out to myself, reach out to our guests. They're happy to help in any way and provide resources. If we don't have the answers, we probably know people who do. So still ask and reach out. And as a reminder, please like, subscribe, and share the episode. It helps the channel. And Ariela, any final last minute thoughts you wanted to give us before we wrap it up?
No, this was really, really fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I've really enjoyed it, and this has been a great conversation. And I know that this will help women that listen to this kind of understand, get out of your own way, get in there and make some things happen. And if you don't know how, like find resources because there are plenty of us out here that have been through it and that will help you. So thank you again for being
Wonderful.
here, and I hope you have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, that was powerful. Let me pull out the three big takeaways from our conversation with Ariela. First, that script we all carry about what success is supposed to look like. It's time to question it. Ariela's client who thought she wanted a promotion but actually wanted to build her own business, that's happening everywhere. The technology shift is giving us permission to ask, what do I actually want? Second, AI isn't just changing what we do, it's exposing who we are. As Ariela put it, we can automate tasks, but we can't automate empathy, emotional intelligence, or human connection. The future belongs to people who can leverage both. And third, get out of your own way. Whether it's the belief that it's too late to change careers, or that you need to have all 10 qualifications before you apply for something, or that there's only one spot at the top, these limiting beliefs are holding you back from opportunities that are literally everywhere right now. Huge thanks to Ariela Picciotto for bringing such insight and authenticity to this conversation. You can find her at Ariela Picciotto. Come and connect with her on LinkedIn. She's doing incredible work helping women cut through the noise and find what actually fulfills them. If this episode hit you in the right spot, do me a favor and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and drop a comment about what resonated most with you. We'll see you next time on The Future of Work with AI.